From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360 and WIFI 1460. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome, fellow patriots, and welcome once again to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader, coming to you live from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, and around the world on the Internet with our Internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And joining me today, as she usually does on Fridays, but wait, this is not Friday, it's Thursday, but she's here just the same, filling in for Sharon Angle, who will be with me tomorrow on Friday. Anna Little is joining us today. Anna, welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
I'm glad to be with you, Rick, and happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday to you, too. Anna, interestingly enough, I took a day off from the show yesterday to spend some time with my bride. We spent the day over in Philadelphia, the nation's first capital. We visited Old St. Mary's Church and Old St. Joseph's Church and St. Mary's Cemetery. And it was very interesting. Old St. Mary's Church was around at the time that our country was being founded. In fact, our founding fathers, on occasion, celebrated Mass at Old St. Mary's Church. And also in the cemetery there is some of the people that helped found our country, including Commodore John Barry, who is the father of the United States Navy. So it was Mary and I had a great time yesterday roaming the streets of Philadelphia. We also visited Carpenter's Hall, where the First Continental Congress was convened. So it was a fun day. It was a beautiful day in Philadelphia. Then we had dinner along the Delaware River and had a very enjoyable day. And I bring this up because I understand that you also were visiting one of the homes of one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson.
That's true, Rick. Today I spent the morning and the early part of the afternoon at Monticello in Virginia. It is a beautiful National Historic Site. It's actually been recognized by the UN as a World Historic Site as well for preservation purposes. I'm not sure what significance that has as long as the U.S. has sovereignty, but it's interesting tidbit. I will tell you that I was duly impressed. This is my first time at Monticello. I've wanted for a long time to visit. And what an architectural feat that home, mansion is. The uniqueness of the location of the servants' quarters and the use of, I guess, the technology of the day. He actually had a clock in the main hall with hours, minutes, and then seconds hands, which was, it had to be wound. There's a ladder in the hallway to go ahead and climb up and wind it. But because the door's in the way, instead of having the grandfather clock approach, the weights are strung across the top of the hallway and then down the sides. And then he's got the days of the week running. He seems to be a budding scientist in his own right. And what I understood from the guided tour, the architectural designs were made by Thomas Jefferson, and he was self-taught. So that's pretty amazing stuff. Add that to the fact that he actually wrote the Declaration of Independence and worked very diligently along with the rest of the founding fathers to give birth to this nation and then to maintain it in the early part of the life of our nation. So he's an amazing guy. And, you saw elements of science in just about every room in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very, very impressive and uplifting. And again, a reminder, listeners, of how much of a difference a single person can make just by applying yourself to a goal and realizing there really are no limits. I mean, other than those imposed by God, there really are no limits. Reach out, make the world the way you believe it should be.
And a couple of things that I remember from being at Monticello, I visited a couple times, loved the place, and was in the vestibule as you walk in. When I was there was some trophies, hunting trophies and deer horns and antler horns that were brought back to Thomas Jefferson by the Lewis and Clark expedition. So that kind of was exciting for me. Also, I can remember that he invented, and I forget what he called it, but he invented something that he could write with one pen, and this contraption, this machine that Thomas Jefferson built, invented, whatever, had two other pens in it, so anything that he would write would actually be duplicated 2 additional times. And I thought that was amazing. Also, he had a book stand where he could read like 5 or 6 books at one time. It was like a rotating book stand. Did you see those things there, Anna? Anna Little, are you still with me? Oh, okay. You know what, Brett? We just lost Anna, so we're going to have to call her back. So, Brett, let's take our break now, and we'll take our break and get Anna back. Okay, and you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And don't forget, you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Today's show, like all our shows, is brought to you by the First Amendment, and it is protected by the Second. Please don't go away. We'll be right back. Hopefully Anna will be with us.
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
You know, no one exposes the issues, liberalism, and the mainstream media like the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Our view for conservative values and issues, take positive action to restore them in our country.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, and we're coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, the way we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you'd like to hear a repeat broadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening, log on to vigilantlibertyradio.us. That's vigilantlibertyradio.us. And for a rebroadcast of yesterday's Conservative Commandos radio show at 5 p.m. this evening, log on to CPRWorldwideMedia.com, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, and click on that Listen Live link. And don't forget you can hear our show anytime, day or night, by calling 832-999-1199. So, Anna Little, I believe you're back with us.
I am back with you, Rick, and thank you so much for bearing with me and that little call drop that just occurred.
No problem.
We should be solid going forward. You know, cross your fingers. It is live radio.
It is live radio. So, Anna, before we were so rudely interrupted by that drop call, you and I were talking about Monticello, and I was mentioning my visits to Monticello and seeing some of the artifacts that were brought back by the Lewis and Clark expedition in the vestibule of Monticello. Also, this machine that Thomas Jefferson invented, how he could write with one pen and it would actually copy with two other pens onto two other additional pieces of paper. An early mimeograph machine. Did you see that?
I did see that. It was located on my walkthrough. It was located on his desk in what he considered to be his book room, and it was at the far end of that room. I highly recommend that everybody take the time to go and visit Monticello. It's very uplifting, and really, I don't think you can understand, no matter how much you read about Thomas Jefferson, you can't really understand the man without walking through his home and thinking about the fact that he designed it fully.
Yeah.
And I also saw the very small one-room building to which he brought his bride, and they lived there for quite some time as he constructed Monticello as you see it today. And to sympathize with that woman and her patience with the situation is also a remarkable experience. But very uplifting, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and speaking of reading, you mentioned earlier, as much as you read about Jefferson, you need to visit Monticello. I also mentioned this book stand that he had, where it was a rotating book stand where he could actually read 5 books at one time.
That's right.
Modern, the founding fathers' equivalent to surfing the web at the time.
That's exactly right. exactly right. And we saw the replica at Monticello right now because the original is actually on loan to the Smithsonian.
Okay.
So if you want to see the original, you need to go to the Smithsonian.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a very unique creation of his. I'm very duly impressed, and I feel like I got a bit of a peek into the mind of Thomas Jefferson by walking through Monticello. So I highly recommend it.
I could understand you feeling that way because you really do get a sense of what a Renaissance man he was, that he was greatly influenced by the time that he spent in Paris, and that many of the architectural features of Monticello he brought back from Paris with him. And one unfortunate thing about his life is he never really saw Monticello finished. It was always a work in progress, not just in the mind of Thomas Jefferson, but in the hands of the carpenters and builders that actually built it. So it's two other things I wanted to mention about my visits to Monticello. One was being able to look through his spectacles, his eyeglasses. They had a pair of one of his eyeglasses on a table, and you weren't able to touch it, but you could look at them, and you could see through the glass that Thomas Jefferson himself looked through, and also his bed, the bed in which he died. And, you know, Anna, there's a terrific story, and I'm sure many of our listeners know about it, that Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died on the same day, which was
correct.
July the 4th, 1826, on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And on John Adams' deathbed, he even said, "And Jefferson yet survives." And unfortunately, by that time, Thomas Jefferson had died just a few hours before John Adams said that, and those were John Adams' last words. So they were in each other's thoughts on their deathbeds. And one other thing I wanted to say about the life and actually the death of Thomas Jefferson was he was very sick at that time, but he was determined to live to see another 4th of July. And very shortly after midnight, he asked, and his last words were, "Is it the 4th yet?" And he was assured that that it was, and he closed his eyes, and a very short time after that, he drew his last breath and died. I mean, Anna, the inspirational stories that have come out of our history is absolutely incredible.
The level of commitment our founders had to this country and to all of us who they had no way of even meeting yet.
Yeah.
So it takes that kind of dedication, listeners, to keep this country, and we owe it to those founders who dedicated lives, their fortunes, the space in their brains to this country. You know, everything they were and everything they had was put into making this nation and then preserving it in the years. So we owe it to them to maintain it. We really do. And we should be indebted to them.
Absolutely.
And we should teach our children to be indebted to them.
Absolutely. That's why history is so important. Hey, Anna, before we get too much farther, why don't we go over our list of guests for today? At 3:35, I'm going to be speaking with Joshua Murevchik. He's a senior fellow at the Johns Hopkins University of Advanced International Studies. He's the author of hundreds of articles and has appeared on major articles appearing in U.S. newspapers and intellectual magazines, and he's the author of 9 books. His latest book is Making David into Goliath, How the World Turned Against Israel. And Josh is going to be joining us to talk about an article that he has written on the New York Post, how the UN was perverted into a weapon against Israel. So that should be a very interesting conversation today. So, Anna, who are you going to be speaking with?
Well, at 4:05, Rick, I get to speak with Trey Kovacs. He's a labor policy analyst at Competitive Enterprise Institute, focusing on economic impacts of labor and finance policy. His research areas include public sector unions, labor policy reform, and employer rights, and his writings have been featured in the American Spectator, the Washington Times, Capital Research Center's Labor Watch, and he's also a regular contributor to openmarket.org. Trey is the managing editor of workplacechoice.org and CEI's comprehensive labor news website. He's going to talk to us today about union activities in Kentucky, and most notably, the teachers' union in Kentucky is demanding a pay raise in order to perform union business, which I find highly objectionable in this economy, given the fact that taxes inhibit economic growth, and obviously the pay raise would be paid by the taxpayers, not the union.
And you know, Anna, when you talk about union activity, generally you're talking about union political activity and lobbying for the teachers' unions. And so they want to be, not only they want to be paid for that, but they want pay raises to be able to do that. Incredible.
Right, and what has to happen is the union needs to run like a business. They collect dues. They have to use their dues to pay lobbyists or actors, you know, individuals to do whatever it is they need to do to perform their union business. Stop taking teachers out of the classroom to get it accomplished. And, you know, obviously if teachers are going to be taken out of the classroom to accomplish union business, they ought to be paid from the union dues.
All right, Anna, we only have about a minute and a half before we go to the break. So who else are you going to be speaking with today?
At 4:35, I'm going to be speaking with Leah Karawan. She's the president and executive director of the Congressional Prayer Caucus Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization which will unite and mobilize government leaders to protect religious freedom, really, and preserve America's Judeo-Christian heritage. She's going to talk to us today about Christians from across America using social media to fight against an ongoing push to secularize America, to hide God, and to put Jesus in the closet. And she's going to talk to us about a new Veterans Administration cover-up of chapel religious symbols, which I think is highly offensive and certainly against the First Amendment.
All right, and yesterday, July 30th, Christians from across America used social media to fight against the ongoing push to secularize America. So that is going to be an interesting conversation. So, all right, let's take our break now, Brett and Anna. We're going to take a break. You are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, as we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, and around the world on the internet via our internet partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. Don't forget you can hear our show anytime, day or night from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioshow.com and CCRShow.com. Be right back.
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos Radio Show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
You know, no one exposes the issues, liberalism, and the mainstream media like the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Our view for conservative values and issues take positive action to restore them in our country.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers. "9/11. It's a day that will go down in our history as the most horrific and destructive scene ever to happen on American soil. It will also be, for most Americans who witnessed it either up close or simply watched in horror on TV, America, to participate in a national memorial I call the United Action of Prayer this coming 9/11 and every 9/11 from then on. United Action of Prayer is simply every American stopping whatever they are doing for 1 minute at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or pray in memory for the 9/11 victims and their families, and perhaps a prayer of gratitude for living in a country where even 9/11 could not at all weaken the spirit of our great nation.
If you're in a crash and have little cash, come to AJ Auto Body. We handle insurance claims fast, and repairs are guaranteed to last at AJ Auto Body. Come check us out, and without a doubt, you'll be satisfied. That's AJ Auto Body, 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. Family owned and operated for 30 years. We are a fully licensed and insured auto repair facility located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. We are your friend in the business. So stop in for a free estimate or call us at 856-251-0096. Check us out on the web at www.ajautobody.net. That's where you'll find our specials, discounts, and coupons. For all your car needs, come to AJ Auto Body, located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. 856-251-0096.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. "Give us freedom" was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Manier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be free. Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader. And our guest this segment is Joshua Moravicek. He's a fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. He is the author of hundreds of articles appearing in major newspapers and magazines, and is the author of 9 books. His latest book is Making David into Goliath: how the world turned against Israel, a very timely issue. Josh, welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Well, Rick and Anna, thank you so much for having me on.
Well, we appreciate, because, Josh, this is so timely that we have you on today with everything that's going on in the Middle East. And you've got your book out, Making David into Goliath, How the World Turned Against Israel, but you also have an article that's in the New York Post at the present time, how the UN was perverted into a weapon against Israel. And Josh, you begin your article by saying the United Nations Human Rights Council has voted to create an independent international commission of inquiry to investigate all violations of international humanitarian law and human rights. But actually, it's not of all violations, only those attributed to Israel. Josh, it seems like the United Nations is only interested in prosecuting one side of the battle that's going on in the Gaza Strip. Why do they think Hamas is so innocent? What's going on there?
Well, the United Nations is so terribly biased. It's in many things also, of course, biased against the U.S., but Israel is really the favorite whipping boy of the UN, and that's been the case for a number of years, and it's pretty shameless. The UN at other moments has gone so far as to even endorse Palestinian terrorism as some kind of human right. And how did we get here? In the Security Council of the UN, the U.S. has a veto, so we can keep that from going too crazy. But all of the other bodies of the UN, every other one, is majority rule. Mm-hmm. And there are 190 countries, 193 to be exact, in the UN. And of that, 120 belong to something called the non-aligned movement, which is like a caucus of the third world states, of the African, Asian, Middle Eastern states, Latin American states. And it's a very funny name. They call themselves a non-aligned movement left over from the Cold War, but the Cold War ended 25 years ago, so it's hard to know who they're non-aligned with, and yet they run the UN. They have this faction, and but within the non-aligned movement, those 120, about half of them are, or to be exact, 57 of them are states that belong to the Muslim caucus, the so-called Organization of Islamic Cooperation. So they can control the non-aligned movement. The non-aligned movement controls the UN, and if the United States or Israel or some other democracy had control in the UN, we would still want it to behave fairly. And in fact, in the very early years of the UN, the U.S. really did call the shots, and we tried to make it behave fairly and objectively when we had that power. Mm-hmm. But these people are kind of shameless, and they just turn the UN to be a one-sided battering ram for their side of the argument. And ironically, the worst of all is the so-called Human Rights Council, which is filled with dictators who don't give a fig about human rights, and their number one thing is to lacerate Israel.
You know, Josh, I can remember back when I was a child, in particular the Cuban Missile Crisis, and also our U-2 being shot down over the Soviet Union. The United Nations, I think, was a place for good, for nations to come together and to discuss their problems and to work out situations so we didn't get into a war. And that has changed since that time, Josh. And thanks to you and your article here that's in the New York Times, it really pinpoints how the United Nations got from that point to where it is today. And that you write in your article that scores of new nations born in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, the UN grew from 51 member nations to 193 member nations. Josh, please tell our listeners where all these new countries come from, where all these new member nations came from.
Well, it's like that old saying, Rick, that no good deed goes unpunished, because it was the United States after World War II, and at a time when we were kind of in the lead in the UN, and we had really invented the UN, we also were against colonies, against imperialism, and the European powers were our allies and friends, Britain, France primarily, and others on a smaller scale. And we said to them, sorry, no more. We don't think this is right. You have to let these people have their own independence and create their own countries. And so what happens was that all over Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, that was all colonies, and it all became independent countries, as it should have, as was right and just. But but the thing is that there was very little, if any, gratitude toward the United States for pushing against our own allies to create the independence and freedom for these people. And instead, they very often lined up against us, and they're hell on Israel for the reason I said, because so many Muslim states among them. But I think sometimes they're also another reason why they're hell on Israel is that they look at Israel as a kind of a voodoo doll for the U.S. The U.S. is so big and powerful that they feel as if they can't really hurt us much, even though they often envy our wealth and influence and way of life. But they see Israel as our little brother, very little brother, and they feel as if they take a knock at Israel, it would be one way of getting at us.
Hey, Josh, we got to go to a break. Could you hold on for just 2 minutes, because I would like to continue our conversation?
Oh, I'd be very glad to.
All right, we are going to take a break. You are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, the way we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, and around the world on the internet with our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. Please check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioshow.com and CCRShow.com. Our guest this segment is Josh Muravchuk, and he's a senior fellow at Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. We will be right back.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show, and if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening, log on to vigilantlibertyradio.us. And at 5 p.m. this evening, when we end our live broadcast, if you'd like to hear a repeat of yesterday's show, log on to cprworldwidemedia.com. Our guest this segment is Josh Muravchik, and he's a fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. He's the author of hundreds of articles and 9 books. His latest book is Making David into Goliath, How the World Turned Against Israel. We're also speaking with Josh about an article he has in the New York Post, how the UN has perverted into a weapon against Israel. Josh, thanks for holding through the break. We appreciate your time.
Oh, I'm glad to do it, Rick. And of course, I'm an author with a new book out, so I'm eager for the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners about my book. It's a good opportunity for me.
Well, we appreciate it. And as I said, this is so timely. I mean, what is going on in Israel, in the Gaza Strip, is all over the news. And I think it's something that a lot of people are misunderstanding, Josh, to be honest with you. But let's get back for a minute about this connection between how the UN has turned on Israel. Again, your article that's in the New York Post is an educational piece as well as a historical piece. You write in here, in 1947, the UN, the United Nations, voted to partition Palestine, thus legitimately creating Israel. And that's one thing that people have to remember. It was the United Nations that, first of all, created Israel. And also in 1967 and 1973, the UN Security Council resolutions 242 and 338 called for secure and recognized boundaries, thus acknowledging that Israel need not relinquish any of the territory captured in the Six-Day War. Josh, it seems the way the UN is talking now versus the way the actions the UN took back then is a world apart. Do you think it's time for countries like the United States and Israel and others who have the guts enough to follow us to get out of this rogue United Nations today?
Well, Rick, I'm not sure we should get out. The reason is just sort of in the way you asked the question, the others who would have the guts enough to follow us, I don't think there are any that would have the guts to follow us. Israel would, but I think it would probably be the only one. I don't think our European allies would do it. And the Europeans, they don't really go along with a lot of this third world stuff if you talk to them privately, but they are just so intimidated that they don't want to stand up against it. So even in the current UN, like when the UN so-called Human Rights Council passed this completely unfair resolution that I described to investigate only Israel but not to investigate Hamas about the current warfare, and to condemn, also same resolution, condemn Israel even before the investigation. 27 countries voted in favor of it. By the way, of those 27 countries, the large majority don't belong in any human rights council. The large majority are dictatorships. There are only a few democracies among them. And 27 voted for it, and the United States alone voted against it. Israel's not a member of the Human Rights Council, couldn't get elected in the UN, but the United States was the only no vote, and England, France, Italy, Germany are all on the council, and they all abstained.
Well,
they knew the resolution was awful, but they just didn't have the guts to say no.
And Josh, I think it's very interesting the reason you mention why England, France, and Germany and other free countries abstained. It was over their guilt of their colonial past. Very interesting.
They do feel, the funny thing about this is, it would have been good if they felt guilty when they had these colonies and let them be free sooner. Now, decades later, they're consumed with all this guilt, and it leads them, to just lose their principles. I mean, the fact is, they were wrong to have these colonies, but today, the most valuable thing in politics in the world, in my opinion, is freedom and democracy, the deepest values. And, of course, we have that in the Western countries. These Asian and African countries are mostly, sadly, but they're mostly terrible dictatorships where the governments do terrible things to their own people. And yet, because of this retroactive or retrospective guilt, the Europeans are afraid to criticize them.
Josh, if we can, let's talk a little bit about your book. And in full disclosure, I have not read it. Okay, your book is Making David into Goliath, How the World Turned Against Israel. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and why you decided to write it?
Yeah, I'd love to. Rick, I got the idea for writing it one morning when I saw the story that the largest newspaper in Sweden had run with a story saying that Israelis were slaughtering random Palestinians, not in a war, just randomly picking up Palestinians, slaughtering them, and then cutting them open to take out their body organs and sell them. And the story, of course, was a complete fraud, but a Swedish reporter made it up, and a Swedish editor of the largest newspaper ran with it. And I said to myself, how could it be that the world has gotten such a crazy idea about Israel? It's one thing to criticize Israeli politics.
Now, you said this was a newspaper. It wasn't a website. It wasn't some crazy tabloid. This was a newspaper, correct?
The largest selling newspaper in Sweden.
Incredible.
A daily newspaper. And so I said, how did we get here? This is not criticizing Israel. This is really crazy that you could think this about Israel and that you'd put it in your newspaper if you were an editor. And also, I remember, as you probably do, Rick, decades ago when Israel had a lot of support and sympathy around the world. And I asked myself, how did this turn around? And I started studying it. It took me a few years to study, and then I sat down and wrote this book. And two things, I think. One is there was a lot of physical, material pressure brought to bear. There was the oil embargo. There was a lot of intimidation by terrorism. There was just the sheer weight of numbers that I talked about, for example, in the UN. So many Arab and Muslim states and only one Israel, and so many, 100 Muslims in the world for every single Jew. So all these are kind of material pressures that were brought to bear. But then there was a big intellectual change that happened in the world of the progressive, liberal, leftist world, in which for a long time the sexy driving idea of leftism was the poor against the rich, the workers against the capitalists, class struggle. And I think in the last decades that kind of fell by the wayside in favor of a new sexy struggle that was part of this anti-colonial stuff that you and I were talking about, which was the rest against the West, or the people of color against the white man who had been oppressing them. And that came to be the really exciting thing to leftist philosophy. And if you look at the world through that lens, well, Israel are the Western white guys, and the Arabs and Palestinians are the anti-colonialist people of color, and they're always right and the white guys are always wrong.
Josh, what part has oil played in this?
Well, it played a real powerful part. Starting with the embargo of the 1970s, and it really brought Europe and Japan to their knees to the point where they openly said, they didn't really make bones about it, they openly said, we've got to change our policy in the Middle East because we're dependent on them for oil. And so they started in the European diplomacy and in the European organizations to pass resolutions that just took the Arab side, even though before then they had been sympathetic to Israel. And after the embargo was over, Secretary of State Kissinger said, we Western countries can't allow ourselves to just be twisted around like that by these countries that have all the oil. We've got to find ways to resist and fight back. And he made a tour that he writes about in his memoirs, a tour of European capitals trying to get our allies to screw up the courage to stand with us and come up with some countervailing mechanism. And he says in his memoirs that he got nowhere. He said every minister I spoke to was terrified, Kissinger's word, terrified of getting into a wrangle with the oil producers. So
what's interesting, Josh, about that, they're also in a wrangle right now with Russia. Because they get a lot of their energy, a lot of their natural gas from Russia. So right now they're afraid of the Middle East. They're afraid of Russia. I mean, they're really in a bind that they put themselves in, by the way.
I agree, Rick. And, you would think that people would have learned the lesson of appeasement. When England and France practiced appeasement of Hitler, that really brought about World War II. It was supposed to prevent World War II, but it really caused World War II, and it was the worst disaster ever. And you would think people would learn from that mistake that appeasement is a terrible policy, but Europeans seem to do it over and over again. And there was an amazing story yesterday in the New York Times which said that the main funding for Al-Qaeda and the other most radical terrorist groups today is no longer coming from Arab oil money.
Wow.
Coming from European governments who are secretly paying ransoms because these terrorist groups are kidnapping.
Josh, I'm sorry to do this, but we're up against the end of our interview time here, and I wanted to give you time to plug your book one more time and tell people where they can get it. And please pronounce your name better than I have and the spelling and all that, because I want people to definitely check out your book.
Thank you, Rick, for that opportunity. It's Joshua Moravchik, Muravchik. My book is called Making David into Goliath. It's about a lot of important political history, but I promise you it's written in a very easy-to-read way. And you can find it in local bookstores, although I can't tell you, which bookstore will have it or won't, but it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and any other, internet seller of books. Making David into Goliath. It's, if I may, try to boast, it's an easy book to read, and I think there's a lot of interesting information in it.
Well, Josh, history is so important because those who don't know their history is doomed to repeat it. Josh, I really wish I could continue this interview with you. I would like to learn more from you about what is actually going on in the Middle East and not just what the media is telling us. Please come back sometime.
I'd be glad to. It's a great opportunity for me to speak to you and your listeners, Rick. So whenever you want to schedule it, I'll be there.
All right, thank you so much, Josh Moravchik, and his book is Making David into Goliath: How the World Turned Against Israel. Josh, thanks for joining us. We are going to take a break. You're listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360 in Philly, and around the world on the internet. Please don't go away. Anna and I will be right back with our next guest.
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots,
The Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
You know, no one exposes the issues, liberalism, and the mainstream media like the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Our view for conservative values and issues, take positive action to restore them in our country.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers. "9/11. It's a day that will go down in our history as the most horrific and destructive scene ever to happen on American soil. It will also be, for most Americans who witnessed it either up close or simply watched in horror on TV, America, to participate in a national memorial I call the United Action of Prayer this coming 9/11 and every 9/11 from then on. United Action of Prayer is simply every American stopping whatever they are doing for 1 minute at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or pray in memory for the 9/11 victims and their families, and perhaps a prayer of gratitude for living in a country where even 9/11 could not at all weaken the spirit of our great nation.
If you're in a crash and have little cash, come to AJ Auto Body. We handle insurance claims fast, and repairs are guaranteed to last at AJ Auto Body. Come check us out, and without a doubt, you'll be satisfied. That's AJ Auto Body, 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. Family owned and operated for 30 years. We are a fully licensed and insured auto repair facility located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. We are your friend in the business. So stop in for a free estimate or call us at 856-251-0096. Check us out on the web at www.ajautobody.net. That's where you'll find our specials, discounts, and coupons. For all your car needs, come to AJ Auto Body, located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. 856-251-0096.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
Man your battle stations.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Manier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be free. Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, as we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and around the world on the Internet with our Internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. Our guest this segment is Trey Kovacs. He's a labor policy analyst at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. He focuses on economic impacts of labor and finance policy. His research areas include public sector unions, labor policy reform, and employer rights. Trey, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
Thanks for having me on, Rick.
Appreciate it. Trey, we've asked you to join us today to discuss an article that you wrote about the Kentucky Teachers Union. An article, Kentucky Teachers Union demands pay raises to perform union business. And Trey, you start out your article by saying contract negotiations between Jefferson County Public Schools and its teacher unions have hit an impasse. Surprise, surprise. Union officials want more than the state-mandated 1% raise, which is all that the JCPS, the Jefferson County Public Schools, have been willing to offer. And also in this article, Trey, you quote a teacher. His name is Andrew Bailey. He's a high school teacher and a Jefferson County Teachers Association's board member. And he says, I think the district needs to reevaluate how it's spending its money. It needs to go to the classroom. Well, Trey, isn't the money going to the classrooms?
Well, that's what, unfortunately, he's right that the district needs to reevaluate how it's spending its money, but just not the way he thinks. Because the problem is that a lot of these teachers are released from the classroom to go conduct union business on the taxpayer's dime. And so really what needs to happen is that the school board needs to reevaluate that provision in the collective bargaining agreement and get rid of it.
Well, I would think some people are or would be surprised that teachers are not spending all their time in the classroom, and that some teachers, and as you have in your article, some teachers are paid to perform union business instead of teaching. Trey Kovacs, what kind of union business are they doing rather than teaching?
That's what, a ton of activities. Sometimes they're even allowed to lobby legislators to pass, bills that would give them higher pay or things of that nature, or to attend like the National Education Association conference where they talk about, anti-gun resolutions that they pass and all kinds of political activity. And then they also get to file grievances on the taxpayer dime and also negotiate contracts.
What about political activity?
Yeah, so really anything that union dues should pay for, the taxpayers are paying in the instance of release time. And the worst part about release time is that unless you file public records requests, there's no way to find out how much money and how much time teachers are spending outside of the classroom.
Here on the Conservative Commandos radio show, we're speaking with Trey Kovacs. He's a labor policy analyst at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Anna Little, are you back with us?
I am back with you, Rick.
All right. Anna, you know, we're talking about Kentucky, how the teachers are demanding pay raises to perform union work. And we're here in the state of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey, their teachers are controlled by a teachers union, the New Jersey Educational Association. That about 10 years ago, the figures were that the NJEA took in $140 million, Anna Little, in union dues alone from the teachers. And I'm rather suspicious of that amount of money that teachers' unions are taking in and what they do with that money, Anna Little.
Well, you know, I think that teachers' unions, first of all, in New Jersey, we're a closed shop. That is not true in every state in the union. And a closed shop means that every teacher is required to join the union. Now, if you withdraw from the union, you still have a certain amount of dues taken out of your paycheck, whether you're a member or not. So that's the situation. So what should union dues be spent on? I mean, that's what begs the question. A union is an association. It should act like any other association. Union dues should pay for the activities of the union, and taxpayer dollars should pay for the activities of the teacher in the classroom. Now, paid leave, sick leave, all of these are issues that enter into contract negotiations. Release time, to me, is a situation where you have an overlap between the union dues being available to pay the teacher and the taxpayer dollars being available to pay the teacher. And although it's been negotiated in a contract, I wonder whether it would hold up in the courts relative to, I mean, they're being paid double for the same time. Mm-hmm. If you look at, because release time is designated as a certain period of time for union uses. And that, you know, if they're being paid for that by the union as well, they're being paid twice at the same time. And I'm not sure that holds up on the public dollar. Do you have any thoughts on that, Trey?
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because in Arizona, they've ruled that release time is illegal under their constitution, what's known as the gift clause, which says that public monies have to be spent to promote the public interest. And they ruled that release time only benefits the government unions that receive the benefit, and that the public receives nothing. And the great part about the gift clause is Kentucky has a gift clause, and most states have a gift clause. And really all it takes now is action by taxpayers to file a suit.
Well, I guess the taxpayers in Kentucky need to step up. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. You know, from public records requests that I found, you know, the city of Louisville, you know, annually gives away about 7,000 hours of release time to its city employees. And it's interesting you mentioned New Jersey, because their Commission of Investigation did a thorough review of release time, and they said from 2006 through 2011 that union release time cost $30 million.
Wow. Hey, Trey, you know what else I found interesting? We were talking about Andrew Bailey, the high school teacher from Jefferson County, who was talking about more money needed to go to the classroom. Very interestingly, in your article, you say Andrew Bailey, the same teacher that says more money needs to go to the classroom, Andrew Bailey spent 10 school days on release time to participate in union activities instead of teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just shows the hypocrisy. And there was other teachers from the article who were making statements who also received release time, and some even to engage in political activity. So, I mean, it just shows the hypocrisy of unions when they make all of these claims that all this money is going to administrators or outside the classroom. You know, they really need to take a long, hard look to see, you know, who's really having frivolous expenses.
Hey, Trey, speaking about expenses, we got to take a quick break. Could you hold on for just a couple of minutes?
Yeah, sure.
All right, you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, the way we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, and around the world on the internet with our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. Don't forget, you can hear the show anytime, day or night, from any telephone, just like I did yesterday while I was walking the streets of Philadelphia, by calling 832-999-1199. We're speaking with Trey Kovacs. He's a policy analyst at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, talking about the Teachers Union.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, the smiling coast I know, only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos Radio Show. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening Eastern Time, log on to VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And for a rebroadcast of yesterday's Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 5 p.m. this evening, please go to CPRWorldwideMedia.com and click on the Listen Live link. Now you can listen to Conservative Commandos Radio Show at any time, any day, by calling 832-999-1199. That's 832-999-1199. Call using your cell phone at no extra cost. It does use mobile minutes. But this segment, listeners, we are speaking with Trey Kovacs. He's a labor policy analyst with the Competitive Enterprise Institute, and he has been speaking with us today about Kentucky Teachers Union, which is demanding a pay raise to perform union business. So, Trey, I'm really glad you were able to hold on during the break. We really respect your time. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Now, we're talking about public dollars here. This is taxpayer funds that are being used to pay teachers for a public service for the common good, and that is teaching in the classroom. And yet, it seems like by this labor negotiation process, they've been able to negotiate this release time, which gives them the opportunity to receive pay at the taxpayer's expense in order to perform union duties, but equally, they're able to get pay from the union at the same time. This has got to be illegal. You've said that there are laws on the books against gifts. What is it that Kentucky residents can do about their tax dollars being illegally spent in this way?
So there's really two options for them. One, you can petition the Attorney General to make a decision on whether this is a legal expenditure or not, and he can file a suit. But also, taxpayers have standings when, a government body doesn't follow the state's constitution. And this is exactly what's happened in Arizona. And basically, there's a two-part test to determine whether an expenditure is illegal or if it's valid. One, the expenditures of public funds must promote a public purpose. And then two, the public entity must receive a proportionate, quantifiable, and direct benefit for the aid given. And as we've talked about with release time, we're paying these union representatives to do union work, which obviously is to the benefit of that private entity and gives no consideration to the public.
Well, I think it's also important to note that the teachers in Kentucky that we're discussing here, it seems they took 192 days of release time at a cost of $67,215. Now, that I'm taking from your article. Now, that was in fiscal year 2013. So we're not talking about one teacher, Mr. Bailey, being 10 days out of a classroom. It's a cumulative effect. When we allow all teachers this kind of release time, it's a mounting expense to the taxpayer, and that's a significant amount in the budget for a local school district. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. And the fact is that this is an annual expense. These collective bargaining agreements normally span several years. So that's a $67,000 expense every year. And what I found doing public records requests to find the amount of release time in different states is that most of the time the public employer doesn't even track the cost or the activity performed. So when you're talking about release time, any of these numbers are a lowball estimate, and it doesn't include the cost of getting a substitute to fill in for the teacher who's not going to be in the classroom, or the office space that these teachers take up.
Wow. But I'm looking at that figure, $67,215 for fiscal year 2013, and even if you just take that snapshot and perhaps, yes, factor in the other expenses that you've mentioned, that's another teacher. That's an annual salary for another teacher.
Oh, absolutely. And that, seemingly it would be a teacher who would be in the classroom every day, not teachers who are, in, a couple of days a week and then, out another couple doing union business. It gives continuity to the classroom as well.
Trey, I guess people might think because we're talking about Kentucky today that this only goes on in Kentucky. But in your article, you also point out that it's not just a problem in Kentucky, it's nationwide. For example, you cite that in fiscal year 2012 in the city of Louisville, well, I guess that is Kentucky, but it's not just the one state. You mentioned Arizona when we were talking earlier, right?
Oh, yeah, their police union, it was in the city of Phoenix, was $1 million annual expense for release time. And essentially any state that allows collective bargaining in the public sector has release time in their collective bargaining agreements. It's pretty much universal at the local, state, school districts, and the federal level. At the federal level, it costs, around $150 million a year. And that, and that also has, different travel costs that, they don't report, and office space and all sorts of things. So, yeah, this is a nationwide problem on every level of government that exists.
Are there any states, Trey, where they've been able to negotiate with the union and make some headway on this issue of release time, perhaps not eliminate it completely in one shot, which I think would be appropriate, but perhaps have gotten the teachers to go ahead and give back a certain amount in exchange for raises, or perhaps just give back in order to keep their jobs?
Unfortunately, I haven't heard of any instances of that happening. However, there are certain provisions that require the union to reimburse a certain share of the cost. But it's never the full amount, and I've never heard of any union in negotiation willing to give up release time, because that allows them to do other things instead of having to have the union stewards, protect or negotiate for their members. They can have, the membership do those things while they try to organize new workplaces.
I'm sorry, they try to organize new workplaces?
Right, so basically release time allows the union officers to, do different organizing and political activities while the membership is allowed on release time to do what you would think union officials normally do, which would be to negotiate contracts and things of that nature.
Okay, so, I can understand needing to be present at negotiations that happen on school property during school hours, and, maybe a teacher wants to be present, especially if it pertains directly to them. I can understand that scenario. But organizing new office space for the union, or all of that just seems like union operations, which to me should be outside of the teacher's obligation to be in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what a teacher is hired to teach in the classroom. As much as they might want to have some say in the negotiations or be there, that's not where, taxpayers, those dollars go to them being in the classroom, not in negotiations. That is a cost that the union should bear, solely, not taxpayer dollars, not, teachers taking their time out of the classroom to do those things. That is a union expense, and the union should cover it.
Right, and in a lot of litigation even, much of it can be done by an attorney or by a representative. It's not always required, and certainly if there's a subpoena involved, that's a separate area of the law that doesn't need to be negotiated by contract.
Exactly.
Someone is subpoenaed to go to court, they get paid for the day from their employer, and they go to court. That's how that is.
Right,
so,
it's similar to jury duty or something, but it would be rare that you'd have teachers subpoenaed all the time.
No, I don't think so. And the representative can usually handle things. Well, this has been a very enlightening conversation about a very important topic. And, just as we close out the segment, please share with our listeners what it is they can do in Kentucky or in any state in the union to address the issue of release time during contract negotiations, because board members are elected. They'll listen to people. If you go to the meetings, that's what you have to do, is show up. So what do you want them to say? Who should they address?
Yeah, that's whichever, elected officials, at whatever level of government are negotiating contracts, they should, be petitioned and made aware that they're giving away the public's money to private interests that do nothing to promote a public purpose, and that that's wrong, and that's, that they don't appreciate how, they're frivolously, spending their tax dollars.
Hey, Anna, if I could jump in for a minute. Do you remember, Anna, when during the first year of Chris Christie's term as governor, how thousands of teachers took off a day from work to go to Trenton to protest his budget proposals?
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, that's where our tax money goes. Hey, Trey, I want to thank you for joining us here on the Conservative Commandos radio show. Please tell our listeners where they can go and read this article and follow your writings.
Yeah, that's what. Please go to workplacechoice.org, and it's got, different public records requests on release time data and all sorts of labor policy articles.
And, just wanted to mention, Trey and Anna, that this Jefferson County is just a small example. You guys started to talk about the city of Louisville. In fact, that in fiscal year 2011, Louisville authorized 6,321 hours of this activity. Fiscal year 2012, 6,955 hours, almost 7,000 hours. Unbelievable. Trey, I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Take care. God bless. Okay, we are going to take a break right now. You're listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with our new internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. Don't forget you can hear our show anytime, day or night from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. Please don't go away. Anna and I will be right back with our next guest.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
You know, no one exposes the issues, liberalism, and the mainstream media like the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Our view for conservative values and issues, take positive action to restore them in our country.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
– 9/11. It's a day that will go down in our history as the most horrific and destructive scene ever to happen on American soil. It will also be, for most Americans who witnessed it either up close or simply watched in horror on TV, America, to participate in a national memorial I call the United Action of Prayer this coming 9/11 and every 9/11 from then on. United Action of Prayer is simply every American stopping whatever they are doing for 1 minute at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or pray in memory for the 9/11 victims and their families, and perhaps a prayer of gratitude for living in a country where even 9/11 could not at all weaken the spirit of our great nation.
If you're in a crash and have little cash, come to AJ Auto Body. We handle insurance claims fast and repairs are guaranteed to last at AJ Auto Body. Come check us out, and without a doubt, you'll be satisfied. That's AJ Auto Body, 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. Family owned and operated for 30 years. We are a fully licensed and insured auto repair facility located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. We are your friend in the business. So stop in for a free estimate or call us at 856-251-0096. Check us out on the web at www.ajautobody.net. That's where you'll find our specials, discounts, and coupons. For all your car needs, come to AJ Auto Body, located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. 856-251-0096.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Manier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be free. Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And this is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, our flagship station, and around the world on the internet. And Anna Little, we do have our next guest with us. Will you please make the introduction?
I would be honored to do so, Rick. Listeners, we have the honor of speaking with Leah Carawan. She's the president and executive director of the Congressional Prayer Caucus Foundation, Inc. It's a nonpartisan nonprofit organization established to unite and mobilize government leaders nationwide who are committed to protecting religious freedom and preserving America's Judeo-Christian heritage. Leah is an executive coach, speaker, and consultant, and her career has spanned 3 decades, transitioning seamlessly between entrepreneurship, fashion, consulting, ministry, and motherhood. Leah, welcome to Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
Thank you, Anna and Rick. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Leah, why don't you start off by telling our listeners what you can about the Congressional Prayer Caucus Foundation?
Sure, absolutely. So we are a nonprofit organization, like you mentioned, and we work alongside the Congressional Prayer Caucus. And for many of your listeners, maybe have never heard that there's actually 100 members in Congress who are part of a Congressional Prayer Caucus committed to the same mission that we have, protecting our religious liberties, preserving our Judeo-Christian heritage, promoting prayer and God's enduring place in America. They are active and mobilized, and they've had victories that have been, they're the ones that have worked to make sure that In God We Trust was not left out of our Capitol Visitor Center when they tried to, architect of the Capitol tried to admit it. They've been very, very instrumental at the federal level. And what the foundation does is we've actually taken their victories and their pattern of how they've been able to unite, and we are doing that across the nation. So we've built a network of government leaders at the state and local levels, over 400 leaders in 16 states so far, and growing daily. And that's primarily that's our core mission. And then we have a number of initiatives that we have launched to try to redirect and realign America with our Judeo-Christian values.
Well, that sounds like a very, very important purpose, and it does sound like it goes right to the founding principles of this nation, which was, well, let's just mention the First Amendment, freedom of religion. I mean, we have to make sure that this so-called separation of church and state, which frankly doesn't exist, never did at the time of the founding, shouldn't exist today, but that this so-called separation of church and state doesn't restrict or eliminate our First Amendment rights to freedom of religion. So I think it's a pretty central cause. Now, we've asked you to join us today at Conservative Commandos Radio Show to discuss this issue. It seems that on July 30th, that's yesterday, Christians from across America used social media to fight against this ongoing push to secularize America. That is, to hide God and put Jesus in the closet, as they say. Tell us about what was going on yesterday, and does that continue onward now?
Well, that was one of the initiatives or one of the layers that we have that we put into place that's part of the bigger In God We Trust, Put It Up campaign. And yesterday we had tremendous success through social media. We, through the groups and organizations that promoted this, we reached a combined fan base of 1.5 million through Facebook and Twitter. Our posts that we did specifically were shared by over 2,000 people shared our posts repeatedly yesterday. But we had that's just one of the things that we have launched. We also have a million window campaign that is rolling out right now that people can get involved with if they go to ingodwetrust.com. And the whole point of this, Anna, is we know that people are tired of being told they have to be quiet. We can't speak about God. God's not a part of this nation. And we're just simply pushing back and being proactive and saying, yes, it is. We want to change the narrative, change the momentum. It's our national motto, and we want to make sure that people know that. And so we're having it put up all across this nation.
Well, that's just wonderful. But I have to ask you the question, Leah, with all that you're doing and with all of the people that you're reaching in your efforts, is the government listening? Because, we have this Veterans Administration cover-up that we've got to talk about. And, I wonder, is government listening? And what is it that we need to do to get their attention and accomplish our goals?
Well, government it's a difficult thing to use the word government, because government includes how many thousands and thousands of individuals. And yes, some of those individuals in our government and positions of authority have a very different view of the direction in which America could go, and they are fine with it and even helping it go in a direction that does not include God. But let me just say, there is a vast number of government leaders who believe in what we're talking about. They're fighting for religious freedom and God's place in America. And in response to that Veterans Affairs Hospital in Michigan that was ordered to conceal all their Christian symbols, 22 members of the Congressional Prayer Caucus immediately sent a letter to the VA urging them not to scrub its chapels of all religious symbols. Whenever you hear about some of these things, we do have government leaders at the federal, state, and local level that are willing to stand up. But guess what? They can't do it alone. The citizens have to know who they are and get behind them and make sure that they hear the voice of we the people, because we're the ones that influence the government.
Now, just so that the listeners are clear, earlier this year, it was the Veterans Administration hospitals that were accused of covering up how long their patients wait for care, right? But it seemed like those particular Veterans Administration hospitals, it was in the chapel that they were covering up these religious symbols. Is that right?
Well, the one that I'm aware of is the one in Michigan for sure. There was a VA policy handbook that was published in 2008, which had a policy that said that the VA chaplains are not providing, when the chaplains are not providing or facilitating a religious service for a particular faith group, the chaplain must be maintained as religiously neutral. And so what they took that as to mean, well, then we need to go in and cover up all the crosses, cover up all the statues and the anything that has anything to do with religion or faith or Christianity. But this is again buying into the lie that freedom of religion somehow means freedom from religion. Well, that is not what the Constitution, the First Amendment says. And we need to make sure that we reinforce the fact that we have freedom of religion and that we are free to have chapels that reflect Christian faith.
Yeah. You know what? I've got to stop you there because we have to take a station break, but it'll only last about 2 minutes. Can you hold on so that we can continue discussing after the break?
Happy to.
Oh, terrific. Thank you so much. Listeners, you are listening to Conservative Commandos Radio Show, and we are talking with Leah Carawan. We're going to be continuing to talk with her after the break, but right now we are coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia and around the world on the Internet with our new Internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And now you can listen to Conservative Commandos Radio Show anytime, any day by calling 832-999-1199. Call using your...
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, smiling 'cause I know only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show, and for a rebroadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening, please log on to VigilantLibertyRadio.us. That's VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And at 5 p.m., in about roughly 10 minutes from now, when our live broadcast ends, if you'd like to hear a repeat broadcast of today's show, please log on to CPRWorldwideMedia.com. Our guest this segment is Leah Karawan. She's the president and executive director of the Congressional Prayer Caucus Foundation. Leah, thanks for holding through the break. We do appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Rick. It's a pleasure to be here.
Leah, I wanted to tell you how my wife and I spent yesterday afternoon. It was a beautiful afternoon here on the East Coast, especially in the city of brotherly love in Philadelphia. And my wife and I went to visit Old St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church. Old St. Mary's is like the second oldest church in Philadelphia. It is a Catholic church, and in the days of our country's creation was kind of unique because not all the colonies allowed for Catholic churches to be built, but Philadelphia was an exception. And Leah, what I found very interesting was that the church had a very rich and famous history, and that members of the Continental Congress officially attended services 4 times during the Revolutionary War, 4 times. And services were also attended there by George Washington and John Adams. So, Leah, this reminds me of also the stories how every meeting of our Continental Congress and our founding fathers started with prayer. So, Leah, where is this separation of church and state that we hear about all the time? Because of one letter written by Thomas Jefferson about 25 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed.
Well, you're exactly right, Rick. I mean, if you repeat a lie long enough, people start to believe it. It's as simple as that. We have a group of people who decided that they wanted to get God out of America. It's an agenda. It's orchestrated. It's well funded. It's thought through. And what they're trying to do is convince. First, they went and they tried to convince the pastors that they cannot speak about anything political or activists in any way that impacts the culture or the political realm. And the pastors have bought into it. And they used this whole concept of separation of church and state and the Johnson Amendment. Then they repeated it over and over, and the people started believing it. And it's as simple as that. It is a flat-out lie, probably the most damaging and dangerous lie that the American people have believed. And we started with an attitude of respect and reverence for the existence of our Creator. It's expressed throughout all of our founding documents, evident on all of our monuments and Capitol buildings, repeatedly affirmed by our leaders for decades and centuries. So for this lie to be perpetrated and convince a whole generation of people, it's astounding, but we've got to reverse this.
And how do we do that, Leah? How do we reverse it?
Well, we start, every one of us that knows the truth starts denouncing this as a lie and replacing it with the truth. It's what people believe affects their behavior. And America is free when the populace have an awareness of God, and they modify their behavior. And so we need to just repeat it, from the shouting it from the housetops and making sure. And that's why we're doing the In God We Trust campaign, because we want this to be a catalyst to say, wait, our nation is founded. This is our national motto, and there's a reason for it. It's a huge opportunity, I think, to quell this lie.
And with that, I'll throw it back to you.
Okay. Well, Leah, I've been thinking about what you were saying just before the break about freedom from religion not being, or freedom of religion not being freedom from religion. And then I'm looking at, the Michigan situation where there's this nationwide policy in VA medical centers where they want the religious articles covered to give us religious neutrality. Now, wherever did we get a concept of religious neutrality in the Constitution or in the founding documents?
That's right. I mean, there is no such a thing. And when you stop teaching the foundational concepts and principles in our schools and you stop having the conversations in the public square, then you get these kinds of inane concepts or ideas. There is no such a thing as religious neutrality. One thing that people need to understand is that every nation will reflect somebody's values through their laws and policies. They have to. There is somebody's laws and values that are going to be reflected, and our nation has reflected Judeo-Christian values and principles from its foundation all the way through for centuries. And there is a concerted effort right now to make sure that the Christians don't advocate and be quiet and leave a sort of a void. And when we do that, guess what? There's other religions and atheists and all kinds of other people with their own values that want to replace Judeo-Christian values with their own. There is no such thing as neutrality. Somebody's values are going to be reflected in the laws and the policies. And if we want to keep a free America, then we had better make sure that Judeo-Christian values continue to be reflected in our laws and policies, because that's the only path to freedom.
Well, you're really very, very inspiring in your dedication to this, and you articulate the issue so very, very well, Leah. Tell us where people can go to find out more information on this issue and to follow your work, please.
Well, if they want to get involved with the In God We Trust campaign, please go to ingodwetrust.com and jump in and buy your window cling. There's going to be more layers that you can get involved with regarding that campaign. If you want to follow the foundation and get alerts from us on a weekly basis in our communication, go to cpcfoundation.com. That's Congressional Prayer Caucus, cpcfoundation.com. and give us your name and email. Just you'll see a place there where you can sign up. We'd be happy to start communicating with you.
Well, Leah, I want to thank you so very much for joining us today. This is perhaps one of the most important issues that we have facing us today. I mean, looking worldwide at the persecution of folks in other countries for being Christian, and now looking at this behavior here in our own country, I think it's about time that we, the people, have taken a stand to defend our right to religious freedom and to go ahead and define that properly so that we can go forward and hopefully set an example for the rest of the world on this issue. Thank you so much for your work, and we're very glad that you joined us, and I hope that you'll come back again soon.
Thank you, Anna and Rick. It would be a pleasure. I would be happy to come back again, and thank you for letting me come on and talk about this very important issue.
Hey, Leah, before you go, I'd like to make this point here on the show. I've made it in the past and probably will continue to make this point as long as we're here on the Conservative Commandos radio show. I think you can draw a line to where our country started its downward spiral, or downward spiral as far as the breakup of the family, the downward spiral as far as more people on welfare today than ever before. So you could say more people in poverty than ever before. The downward spiral as far as the rising crime in our communities. The downward spiral as far as children being born out of wedlock. And that line, Leah, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is when prayer was taken out of school.
No, I think you're absolutely right. The early 60s, you can point back to all these negative impacts in our country to the early 1960s, exactly when that was one of the most important and sad things that happened in our country, is when we said we're going to remove God. You're no longer welcome in our schools. That was a terrible day for us.
Leah Carwan, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and sincerely, I hope you'll come back.
I'd be happy to. Thank you very much.
All right, take care. God bless. Hey, Anna, we got about 30 seconds or so. Final thoughts?
Well, I think you heard it here, listeners. We've got to stand up for our religious freedom. There are Christians throughout the world being marked for death. Their houses are being spray painted. The families are being completely annihilated. We are doing nothing about it. Talk is cheap. Action is necessary. We've learned nothing from the Holocaust. The least we can do here in the United States is stand up for religious freedom, defend the First Amendment, freedom of religion, and stand up and speak about these bad policies, these policies that have no place in our Constitution.
All right, Anna, I want to thank you for sitting in today as my co-host. I also want to thank our other guests for joining us. Don't forget at 5 o'clock, in just a few minutes, if you'd like to hear a repeat broadcast of yesterday's show, log on to cprworldwidemedia.com. And at 9 p.m. this evening, you can hear a repeat broadcast of today's show at vigilantlibertyradio.us. But for right now, we're out of time. We got to run. We got to go. Take care. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow on the radio.
Thank you for listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show. Huge thanks to our co-hosts, contributors, patrons, callers, and our friends at WNJC 1360 and WIFI 1460, where we broadcast live every Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern and 2 to 4 p.m. Central. Look for us on the internet at www.ccrshow.com. Until next time, we are the Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.